Will BlackRock applying for a Bitcoin ETF, spot ETF license? That is extremely bullish for the future. Now, if BlackRock gets approved, and my guess is they already had those talks before even applying, that approval will likely lead to more ETF approvals, and Bitcoin will be off to the races. And isn't that what we're seeing the start of? Now, what does that mean for altcoins? Well, bullish too. But let's not get off to the races completely, even though we had a big run up this morning. That approval might take quite a while, and insiders always have insider type information. And that shows up in the price action. Well, lucky enough today, we're joined by Paul from Definity to look at the price action to see what we can get as far as clues as to the broader picture. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. If you're looking for crypto news without context, or you're looking for panic selling and FOMOing in, well, you can find that in a lot of other places, but not here. If you, like me, came to crypto because you realize the potential for life-changing gains over a 4 to 8 year period and are looking for discussions on becoming a solid, unshakable crypto investor, you're in exactly the right place and the right family, the Rainmaker family. The reason I created this channel is because I once was new to crypto too, 5 years ago. And back then I was looking for a crypto channel and network or group that understood crypto as an investment and discussed important things like investment cycles and projects and the pros and cons of those projects, the risks and guesses at upside if it came together well. And I didn't find that. So we created it. And I say we because it isn't just me anymore. It's a family of rainmakers, and you see them here in the chat. You will see some in our free Telegram group. The link to that is below, and you will definitely find them in our private Patreon group that allows you access to the Rainmaker private Discord. This is where the best discussion and best info is. There are other benefits too, but you will have to join us to find out. Now, if you haven't already, StreamYard's giving me some trouble. If you haven't already, make it rain on that like button and strap in for this show. And let's welcome Paul from Definity.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. It's a very interesting day to be looking at the markets. It's always interesting, isn't it? But today's a particularly good one.
Yeah. Exciting what popped this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to put everything in context. I think the umbrella discussion that we've had and maintained over the months about a corrective phase in a bullish market has been borne out by this current rally. We were looking for a correction, it's just a natural process, but it's important to look at the headlines, but also to remember that there is a big picture out there, a big picture trade, and that is that crypto is still a massive developing asset, and there is much more upside in terms of engagement by the general public that has yet to happen, but it will happen. And people are still figuring out what this new technology can do, and there'll be extremely innovative ways in which they use it. And so, when we get bearish news from, say, the the SEC a few weeks ago, or whether it's SBF and stuff like that, yeah, they are going to knock the the market down. But if you look at the risk on plays, the market is really driven by how much liquidity there is out there, how much risk they want to take, and that ultimately, unless that solid pillar is taken away, the market outlook will remain bullish. And what can take that away is obviously a major crisis, or if we hit a position where the market becomes crazy overbought and everybody's investing, you sit in a taxi and they're telling you which ones to buy and all that sort of stuff. We look for those signs when the taxi drivers are buying. Not that that's any offense to any taxi drivers. It's just an indication that the market is saturated. And I still don't think we're at that stage of saturation. And so it is really interesting. It's really interesting how these cycles play out. But in terms of the risk on indications and indicators, they are still showing that the market underlying, even if the crypto assets have taken a bit of time to catch up, those things are still working nicely to the upside. And I think we said a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was even last week, that the way this might work is the risk on assets would move higher, which they did at the start of the new year or towards the end of last year, and it just took a while for the bad news to come out, and then when it did, crypto assets took off, and lo and behold, that seems to be what's happening today. So you want to see an overly, well, not an exaggerated move, but you want to see this type of move when the news is bullish, and a slightly muted view when the news is bearish, if that makes sense, because that shows that the underlying direction is still or favoring and biasing towards the bullish side.
Yeah, I think this bigger run has been setting up for a while, and we've had so much bad news. And what was interesting is the bad news from 2 weeks ago with the SEC going after Coinbase and Binance and a whole bunch of projects like Cardano and Solana as being securities, and just unleashing a wave. Prices didn't go down very much, like very much at all. And that was a signal. I actually thought about you and, you know, how insiders usually know that there's another deal. So watch the price action. And so with how big that news was and how it could freak people out, why weren't the prices moving farther? And now we're kind of seeing the news that insiders already knew about BlackRock applying for an ETF. And what that would mean, especially because BlackRock has massive ties to the current White House, and they've only had one failure on an ETF application out of like 575. And the one failure was pretty risky application. They're applying for an ETF that didn't have to report near as often as the current ones do. And that got denied. And it was a small like shot in the dark. So pretty much every application that they put in has gotten through. And so now the SEC's actions actually make it a little bit more clear what they were doing. They were setting up for some people that they're politically aligned with to take the reins and be the first in the gates, is what it would seem. And then their actions make more sense. And so maybe institutions are going to be able to start coming in, because even if things are deemed a security, the only reason that's a big deal is because, like, people trade securities all the time. People in this audience trade securities on Robinhood and other platforms. It's not that big of a deal if the SEC would just allow these platforms to be compliant with securities laws so that we could trade securities on them. It's really not a big deal, and let them register as a security and everything's good. It's just the SEC has provided no guidance in how to register as an exchange for Coinbase and all the big players that have been trying to, and no guidance on how projects can register as a security if they want to voluntarily come in. They've been saying they could voluntarily come in, but the projects have tried that, and they actually leave with like fines. So it's like the police saying, hey, you can come in and turn in something and it'll be fine. You come in, turn in, and you leave with a big old fine. Yeah. That did exactly what they must have intended it to. But now they're actually approving some things, and there's probably going to have to be some guidance. Either that or the courts in these lawsuits will make some rulings. And so we might be in for, I think we're pretty much nearer at the bottom. What do you see? What are you seeing in the price actions as you look not only at Bitcoin and Ethereum, but at the correlation to the other markets?
Yeah, I think so. There's some really important things to look at, and one of them, the starting point for everything has always got to be the equity markets. That tells you whether they're the most sensitive to everything. So the equity markets, as far as I'm concerned, still are looking good. I mean, the Dow has gone sideways, but it's trying to break up. It's trying to break out. Sentiment is really bearish, which is fantastic. It just means that this will go, well, probability, it will go to a new high towards the end of this year or into next year. The Nasdaq, I mean, how can that be bearish? That's not bearish. It might underperform a little bit. It's hit a good resistance point, so a bit of a consolidation, but that's been a nicely smooth upward trend, and it doesn't look like it's stopping. So yeah, it could stop here, but it's still going up. If we look at the VIX index, which is a measure of volatility and how much, or whether people are looking to hedge the S&P 500 downside. So this is this shows when people want to pay more for options, this price will go up. So it's kind of an inverse of the volatility of, or you can use it as a sentiment index. So when this goes down, sentiment is bullish, and when it goes up, sentiment is bearish. You can read it like that, but really it's just the cost of buying put options on the S&P 500. And when people are worried that the S&P 500 is going to go down, they start paying money for options, and those option prices start to shoot up. So this is right at the low, and it looks like it's going to go even lower. And we talked about this on the show a few weeks ago about how this was compressing and going down. Now, it would usually bounce around here, but it still looks like it's going to go lower. So this is a really interesting chart for me, and it doesn't jive with what the sentiment is, which is people are saying there's inflation and the Fed are going to raise, and it's really bad, and the market's overbought and all that sort of stuff. So if we look at those things, none of that seems to be correct as far as the chart goes. And when you say insider, I'm not an insider by any stretch of the imagination. I don't get any information from anybody else. I get it all from the chart. So what you can sometimes see from the charts is that the market is not responding in the way that the news flow and the news patterns are suggesting, and that represents an opportunity. So if the market reacts in a muted way to bearish information, and then bullish information comes out and it acts really positive to it, you know that the direction of travel is to the upside. So broadly speaking, the US markets are doing very well. The UK market, the Bank of England may raise interest rates tomorrow. If they do, it'll be the last raise, and that'll be it. The interest rate profile for the US is very similar in the sense that we've been talking about this last 25 basis points and whether that's it. I think that's it, but there's a little bit of doubt in there as to whether they will do one more 25 basis point rise. But overall, I don't think they will. And I think that it is much easier just to talk tough about the market, scare the market into thinking you're going to do 25 and then actually not do it and just wait for the data to look a bit better. And that's how the stock market is looking at it as far as I can see. So all those things are really positive. A really big factor, something that really puts all the pieces in the jigsaw together, would be if the Asian markets are doing very well. Now, we know Japan is screaming higher. We know that the Hong Kong market, which was on this show, we looked at this support level here, where it was going down and has had a nice rebound, and it's corrected a little bit, but it's now starting its new rally. The Chinese market as well. China, if they start spending money, it's going to move the market, especially raw commodities and energy. So that's bounced from a really interesting point here. So I think that the Asian markets are looking to turn around, led by the Taiwanese market, which has had a massive turnaround, and also the Australian market. These stocks are looking really good. These stock indices are looking very interesting. So when people say the situation out there is really bearish and they're looking for the markets to fall, it's not really borne out in the technicals at all. So we can start to look at the majors with that context in mind, but the only fly slightly in the ointment is there may, low risk, but there may be one more 25 basis point rise. And I know that I've said that many times, but I still doubt that they'll do it, but that seems to be slightly overhanging, and there's a bit of doubt about it. But if you look at the way base metals, precious metals, well, perhaps not precious metals, but base metals and soft commodities have collapsed, if there is any food price inflation in there, it must be the producers actually kind of maintaining higher prices to keep their margins, I would have thought. I mean, if the REITs, it's like with petrol, petrol prices go up very quickly when prices move up, but when crude oil collapses, they don't just suddenly bring the gas prices down. They just very slowly bring it down because they make good money on the fact that their input costs have come down so much, and their output costs, they're just trying to hang it in there as long as they can until they're forced to bring it down. So my feeling is that inflation will be in a much better place once that adjustment happens, and then people can stop stressing about higher interest rates, and then the market will take off.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think the crypto assets which have been under a cloud will then potentially see a rush of money, and then the market will just go flying. So that may be happening right now.
Why don't we take a look at the Bitcoin chart as we talk about that?
Yeah, well, here's the Bitcoin chart, and we were looking for a correction. So this was the upward trend. So no matter how bearish the news was becoming, you have to remember that the low in November 2020 and the base had formed down here into January, and we've been going up since January 23. So 6 months in, halfway through the year, the market's gone up and it's had a correction. Well, okay, it was up by 100%, which isn't bad, and now it's pulled back a bit. Well, that's how markets work. They can't go up in a straight line and keep going up. But this rally here is very good. I mean, of course, it doesn't take a technical analysis to tell you that. I thought it might actually come down to this level here. So I was braced for a correction all the way to this point, mainly because of the way ETH looked. And we'll look at that in just a second. But I thought it might break this and then have this sort of rally. But am I bothered by it happening now? No, not at all. This is great. So the fact that it's rushed back up to here, it's going for a high break. We'll have to see whether it does it, but it's certainly in line with the overall trend. And for me, that is the most important thing. Has this trend changed? Is it bearish? Well, no, it's not. It's always been bullish. It was just corrective within that phase and could have gone a bit lower, but thankfully it's turned around a bit quicker. If we look at ETH, we're in a similar situation where this, I think last week we were talking about this little consolidation, how it looked like it would come down, but actually it bounced right off the main trend line. So this is the first support line, and it's now back in the range. So this was never hugely bearish anyway. It was always just consolidating and pulling back against a really decent rally. And actually, I really think that what's nice about this now is this is beginning to form an even bigger base. So if it does go up here, it takes out this 2031 level, and then it gets through these two resistance points, it should have a fairly decent run. And the next line that we'll be looking at is this major downward trend line. Once that's gone, then the extent of the upside will increase. But I've always thought that this has been in the basing phase in any case, and that seems to be borne out by holding this trend line. So I would say the fact that this trend line's held so nicely, that is a very important, it's become an even more important technical line. And even if that had broken, we still have this line beneath it. So, that would have just corrected into the range anyway. So the fact that the majors are doing really well is a great sign. There's a bit of delay between the rotation into the altcoins. So maybe it'll take a couple of weeks or perhaps sooner, but the altcoins should then start to react, especially if the two get really out of whack. So if the majors are really burning higher and the altcoins haven't gone yet, then people will take profits or look for what hasn't moved and move into the other markets. So I think it's really interesting the way it's going. And I haven't even mentioned the dollar yet, which we should come back to, but I want to obviously leave a bit of an opportunity to ask some questions.
Yeah, real quick, Justin was asking if you think this is a dead cat bounce.
No, a dead cat bounce is a dead market that is it's on its way down. So So in other words, like after some form of collapse, the market bounces and then goes down again. So it's usually associated with a trend that is people are buying into for no good reason. And I don't think that this doesn't fit the bill of a dead cat bounce at all. It fits the bill of an upward trend that has corrected. And look, I could be wrong, right? So just because I've said it and just because it's technicals, it doesn't mean it's 100% going to happen. Everything is probability, and we've talked about that many times on the show. But sentiment doesn't suggest it's a dead cat bounce either, because normally that would be something where everyone's really bullish and the market has collapsed, and then it has a little bounce and everybody goes, "Oh, that's it, let's buy," and then that just fades off and then collapses again. So it doesn't look like that's fits the bill for this.
Great. Yeah, that's the questions I had about Bitcoin and ETH. I'm curious what you're seeing in the US dollar. I know it came down right as Bitcoin was going up.
Yeah.
Look at the DXY.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. So the DXY has been, so a few weeks back, I was saying that this might go up as high as this 200-day moving average, around 105, 106, maybe even touch this line. But thankfully, it turned around a bit quicker, which is perfect. Again, it's a bit like the way Bitcoin has bounced a bit earlier than I expected, but still, the core view is that the dollar goes down and Bitcoin goes up. So anything that moves to that position quicker is welcome. Now, last week we did notice that it was turning down and looking like it was going to move into our core direction, and it has been moving down towards this massive level, this 100 level, which when it breaks that, it's really going to collapse. And there is a technical pattern called a descending triangle, which makes a low, makes a high, makes another low around the same level, makes another high at a lower level. Then the only thing is it can take a long time for this to form, which is a positive and a negative. The positive is it gives you time to get into the trade. The negative is that it takes a long time for it to form the trade. So as this goes down again, this still might act as support. It might rally again and have a weaker rally and then break down. So we can't say exactly when it's going to go, just that this is forming a potentially very bearish dollar technical pattern, and that when it's complete, the next phase will be a move down to at least 94, possibly even lower. So with all of that in mind, there's a lot of incentive to be moving into assets that are non-dollar. So gold, silver, Bitcoin, and the stock market. So to me, this is an indication that the market thinks that interest rates are potentially going to be kept at current levels. They're not going to be raised in the US, and they may even be dropped. So because this is going to be forward looking, this is not looking at today, this is looking at 6-9 months into the future. So by the time any of this pattern, any of this trade makes any sense at all, the market would have discounted it and moved on to something else. So I think that the fact that this is building up is looking really good. The weakness that's being shown in the dollar, it has spread, and it's not quite against the yen. The yen is still weak, which is a bit of a fly in the ointment. But there are signs that between the yen and the renminbi, we're possibly close to the end of it. But everything else, the dollar is weak, and that's a good sign. So apart from the yen, it's telling me that I think interest rates are going to go down.
That would be some great news. Now, oftentimes we get really excited, like this is some good news. This is some long-term good news. And one of our Rainmaker family was talking about that. Let me just put this back up. Not that. Web Zombie was saying BlackRock ETF approval deadline is in 8 months, which is right before the halving in 10 months. And so if you think about it, many of you have been in crypto for 2 years, and you felt what these big decreases can be like and how long they take. Now, the write-up is also long, not as long. It actually usually happens quicker, but it still isn't quick. And so I don't want anyone to get disillusioned that like in the next 2 months, we're going to go to like $200,000 Bitcoin or whatever it ends up topping out at. It's likely to happen over a longer period of time. And so the expectations that I have in my mind, and if it happens sooner, great, but is that by the end of 2025, by then it will likely, like 90% chance in is my guess, have happened by then. And so that way, if it happens early, great. And if it doesn't happen early, well, my expectations weren't off, because a lot of what destroys us as an investor is when we get unrealistic expectations. Those unrealistic expectations aren't met. Then we hit despair and we're like, oh, this is terrible. So learning to set proper expectations is a big part of being a savvy investor. Let's jump into some altcoins. These are suggestions from all of you. Last week, it's my fault I wasn't able to do this. So these are from 2 weeks ago's video. And so let's take a look. Oh, no, it was last week we still did. It was the week before that we didn't. Let's take a look. Some of what we're going to be looking at is Illuvium, Render, WAN Chain, Cornucopias, MATIC, and Animal Concerts. And we're going to start with Illuvium and then Render.
Okay, so Illuvium, let's just pop that up. So this is the chart of Illuvium. And we did discuss this before, and it was in this dip that we need to turn around. But look, it looks like there's some signs of life. So it is finding support here. But for me, the most important thing is that that the turnaround is significant compared to what we're seeing on the actual chart. And what I mean by that is that if this is going to turn around, it needs to make some impact, excuse me, on this downward trend. So this is the first move, but it's not really enough to be confident that this is a proper base. We need to see something else break, like this trend line, to indicate that the market has properly turned around. And I'd actually wait even further. I'd probably want to wait for it to go above 65, because if that happens, this would have made a double bottom, a W pattern, with the base around 104. And if it breaks 104, then we're looking at 220, 230, something like that. So being patient sometimes can help. But if you know more about the project and you think this is a really good project and you're willing to leg into it, then that's a different matter. But the way I look at things, I don't mind leaving that money on the table for super smart people who know a bit more about it, for the surety that when other people join, like the next phase, I'm joining with that next phase. And that's what will take this from a major downward trend to a major upward trend. Because look at how that trend to the downside was so consistent. If that was repeated to the upside, we would be going a very, very long way. So, but I can't be sure right at this moment, but I like the way it's at least responding in a small way. And it made this double bottom here, which was a very interesting pattern, but it's a very small pattern. What indicates that the market is turning from a long-term perspective is it makes a larger pattern. So if we change this to a weekly chart, you'll see what I mean. So that's the little double bottom there, 1, 2, and the market went up. But now it's come down again. If it was to go back up again, we would get this massive double bottom. Now that is an if, so it hasn't actually done it yet. So we have to wait for that to play out before I can turn bullish. But for the moment, I would say it's a wait, but I'm still interested in this. And I think a very short-term signal for me, because I wouldn't want to miss something that starts running as well. So I have to have a tripwire that says, hang on a minute, this is doing something really interesting. I would almost take the prior breakout level, which was at 51, because that was so important before as support and then resistance. So through $51, I would say for me, it would be a nibble for a move up to this level here. And then I think we can get serious about a major base. So it is a wait, but it's not that it's bearish. It's just a wait for the moment.
All right. So for Paul, it's a wait. So I am doing a video, it'll probably be tomorrow, on my top 5 crypto picks. And hint, hint, this may or may not be in there. Let me share with everyone what I like. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So we see in the past, it was all the way up to, it actually hit about 1900, even though this chart doesn't fully reflect it. I often, when it gets so low like this, you can't really see anything unless you put it on logarithmic to see where things are really at and what is the relative change. I really like this bottom trend line, and this may not be the bottom, but I like this project. I like it's one of the best Web3 games out there. And the interaction between the different games within the ecosystem, so Illuvium Overworld interacting with Illuvium Zero. So Illuvium Zero provides the fuel needed to travel and to harden shards in order to capture Illuvium or Illuvials. Yeah, it's a great idea. I like this one a lot. I was an early investor in Axie Infinity. I thought Axie Infinity would push this idea of Web3 gaming and play to earn, and it did exactly that. I think Illuvium takes it to a higher level, and so I'm bullish on this. Now, there's a risk because the ILV token can be staked, and you can earn some of the revenues of the company. High likelihood that ILV is a security. Now, that wouldn't be a big deal if there were exchanges where you could just trade it on. It's not a big deal that something's a security. There's just additional reporting constraints on the exchanges. It's only that the US has not been helpful on that. That's been holding everything back. But once they start being helpful, a lot of these exchanges, and probably it's a way to push out the existing exchanges. The current head of the SEC is definitely like a traditional finance guy, and he's probably trying to help traditional finance come in and take as much of the space as possible based on his actions. That's my guess. I don't have a window into his mind to know exactly what. I just have to look at what his actions add up to, and that's what they add up to me. But at some point, it's going to be really easy. Just these things are a security. Put them on exchanges that allow you to trade securities, and no big deal. But that's one of the risks with this one, that it gets deemed a security and then it goes down further before it then goes up. But I love this one for the long term. It's down tremendously. So $1,900 down to $45 roughly. That is down like 95% or something. It would take what would that be? A 50x to get to where it was? No, a 20x to get to where it was. And yeah, I think Illuvium is a fantastic project, and I love passive income. So the fact that this token has a use case that you can stake it and you can earn part of the rewards from people purchasing fuel on the market and other things in the market, I love how they made that token use case. So I do own ILV token. I've been buying more of it. And so for me, it's definitely a buy. My metric was anything below a $60 price was my buy zone, where I started buying a bunch more. Great suggestion by one of our family members. Let's jump over to Render.
Okay, yeah. So Render has been it's been one that's we've really liked, and it's actually held up pretty damn well considering everything else is coming off, or has been coming off, very aggressively, and coming back again. So what can we say other than it's been a bit frustrating from this April period where it made a high and then came down and made a new high which should have extended and then came down again. But these moves are still corrective, and this high is still below, sorry, the previous low is still below this current kind of fork in the ground, which allows an upward trend line to be drawn. So overall, it's looking good, although it's still getting caught up in this consolidation. Of course, what we'd like to see is a breakthrough this 3 level. Psychological levels can often cause this kind of problem. But overall, the trend is still bullish. The 200-day moving average is moving up. It's 60-day moving average is being chewed a bit, but that's okay. I think structurally, this was always in a base, and it was always moving up from that base. Not going to be a straight line. Nothing ever is. But given the way the whole sector has been under a cloud, I don't think that this is done too badly. So it's coming back fast as well, which is also a good sign. So I think this is still a buy. And as long as it's over the 200-day moving average, I'm not going to be panicking about it. But yeah, I mean, there's needed to be a little bit cautious in this current period. But where I would very much like to see it break out, if only because it's a huge technical level, is this 3 area. So if it can get through that, the chart will look really good. Of course, the price would look really good, but it really got stuck there. So that's why I like that level. But the 200-day moving average, obviously you can see in the downward trend, it was down, then it went sideways, the base was being formed, and it's been turning up. So it's still above that. And the shorter term moving average, you wouldn't normally expect the market to stay above a 60-day moving average, because it would mean it's accelerating away. Yes, that's really nice. I think at some point we're going to see a lot of that in the market, but not quite yet. It's hopefully that's for a period in time in the future. But at this phase, where we've had kind of the first big rally and everything, the pullback, and then we'll get the gearing up for the next big phase where that may be possible. So for me, it's still a buy. And yeah, and whilst it's over the 200-day moving average, that for me is the parachute level to get out.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Render, I think, has the right, they're going in an area that is amazing. So what's funny is the computing power is so important, and what Amazon started as a side business has become a main huge revenue source for them. And that is the Amazon, what is it, AWS, Amazon Web Services, I think.
Yeah.
And the reason is because there's so much computational power and processing and storage that needs to happen. And Render is a new way of doing that. And it will allow small companies to be able to have access to things without having massive data warehouses with high, like big fiber lines running to them to be able to connect all these things to high-speed internet. And so they'll be able to get that kind of computing power on demand by people putting their own internet line and computer and their processing power to work for little bits of revenue. And so the idea is revolutionary. And the idea, you know, they call it Render because a lot of the video games in the metaverse of the future might need still a lot of rendering capabilities. But instead of doing big warehouses, this is a way to make it kind of like Uber, where people can put their own resources to work. And so other companies can utilize those resources. Completely amazing idea. They're not the only ones in this, but they are one of the bigger names. And so I rated this as a big buy way back when it was cheap. I think under 50 cents was my go zone on this, that I stocked up on it. And now I'm probably just like jaded, but Paul's probably right. And he's got his metrics in there that like it's showing good signs that it's going to run possibly more. Where would you put your stop losses in, Paul, on this if you were looking for it to run more? And then, if you're looking for it to run more and then possibly pull back.
Yeah.
On this
I was just preparing my
the
next one. Yeah. So you just caught me looking at the next pick. So I mean, I would say around the 200-day moving average is possibly the best. Sorry. Yeah. Which one we were looking at? The
Render.
Yeah, we were looking at Render, weren't we? So yeah, I would say the 200-day moving average, as I mentioned, would be the best place. Well, not the best place, but where I would where I would think of stopping out, because it's acting a bit like a trend line. See the way it's going up. Let me just TradingView have decided to get rid of a button that auto scales, so you have to go into the menu now and auto scale it, which is interesting. I think they're trying to keep, it's like when you go to the supermarket and they move everything around, so you keep looking around at everything, and they're doing the same. So yeah, the 200-day moving average has acted like a nice trend line. So I think for me, that if that goes, a touch of it is fine, a little dip below it is okay, but it's if that's starting to turn down and it closes below, say on a week basis, so I'd use some form of filter, then I'd start to worry that perhaps the heat's come off it. Now, some people might say that this is forming a potential head and shoulders reversal, which would be unusual. You don't see the head and shoulders reversal form in an area like this. But look, if it happens and it triggers, if you draw a line across the bottom there and it triggers, yeah, you may see a bit of weakness. But I'd like to see what's going on in the broader picture before making a call like that. And also, you could only analyze what's in front of you. And at the moment, that isn't a top. The trend is still dominant. And when the trend's dominant and it's to the upside, that's what you have to go with.
Thank you, Paul, for the additional insight. What I do like about Render is that it's its own idea, its own narrative. Notice also Render has been doing well at the time that NVIDIA has been doing well. And so they're actually running together. And what I expected in the crypto space was that everything wouldn't run with Bitcoin in the future, that there would be segments within the space that would run sometimes all on their own. And haven't we seen that with Render? Because it's been going up while almost everything else hasn't. Yet it's been going up at the same time NVIDIA and other processors have. Why? Well, because processing power and computing power is a big deal. And this idea, if it comes together, will be like, I don't know, Uber stock in the early days, right? So I like it. I loved it at the low prices. I'm a little bit jaded because it was so low. I like that it's close, or was recently close, gosh, to its lower trend line. That's where I really like to pick up when I'm picking something up, even in a run. I would watch to see if it reverses for a little head and shoulders action. To me, I'm just going to say wait here. And if it comes back down to that lower trend line and starts to run up some more, that's when I would just be making a swing trade on it. All right, let's jump over to WAN Chain. It's been a little bit since we looked at WAN Chain. WAN Chain is a strategic partner of ours. I'm highly biased towards it. I've held WAN Chain for over 3 years now. I feel like their vision has come together of what they were working for 4 years ago when they first launched. Actually, 5 years ago when they first launched. It's coming together better than ever. I'm really excited about what they're doing. I'm surprised the whole market isn't aware of it, but it's not unusual in a bear market for amazing technology to come out, and a lot of people don't notice yet. That's actually what happened to Axie Infinity, is like Axie Infinity, this idea of play to earn gaming and everything, it was a 3 year overnight success is what they say. Like when like they were building and building and building and nobody noticed, and all of a sudden everybody noticed. So WAN Chain, I would say, is potentially in that same category of an overnight success 5 years in the making.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been fairly neutral these past few weeks. I know we have looked at it a few times where it looked like it was correcting, and I think the last thing we said that it was still in this correction phase, so I'd be waiting. But it's in the zone where one would expect it to turn around. So there's support here for sure, and it's bounced from this area before. So does one want to wait for it to try and get near this low? That to me is dangerous, because if it starts approaching a low, it usually wants to break it, but it's got enough margin here and sentiment is shifting as well. So I still think it's a wait, because I'd like to see it pull away from this support and break this very short-term downward trend line before I jump in. I think bigger picture though, this has all been a base building experience, and ultimately that gets confirmed once it gets through this 35 cents, 36 cents level. The trend has been down, but it broke those trend lines, earlier, and it's just gone into this massive consolidation. So I'm waiting. I'd say it's a wait from the moment. If I was feeling speculative, I might nibble it here and just put a stop, just because it's bounced nicely from this area. But I think, you see, we're on the fence because things are actually starting to move. So I'm going to say just wait for now. Because I'd like to see this downward trend line break. We've also got what can sometimes influence people is a negative cross in the moving averages, where the short-term moving average crosses below the longer-term moving average. I mean, that's not really, to me, the price action is more important than the moving averages, because it's the price action that you trade, not the moving averages. That might deter some algo traders or whatever for a very short space of time, but ultimately context is everything, and the fact that it's in a range, it means that at some stage it will break out of that range, and if it's going to follow everything else, then this should be a major base, because we're bullish on everything else. So it's just a question of when does this start to respond with everything else. So I'll use a very short-term downward trend line just as a filter to say, come on, get through that, and then show us a bit more strength, and we'll run with it. If you're not going to use the trend line, maybe the 200-day moving average, which comes in around 22 cents. That's not a bad indicator to say if it gets back over there. But ultimately, where I think things get really interesting is when it breaks through this 30 cents and then this 36 cents, because that's where all the resistance is, and this would be a major basing pattern. So I do like it. I'm just a little cautious just for the short term.
Yeah, obviously I'm a big fan of WAN Chain. Their market cap is right now at 36 million. It's come way down. I like it at this price, even though it might go down further. And it's hard to tell if it will go further. But like Paul said, it's going down along this trend line. And what I usually do is I nibble, and then I pick up some more. Now, I have a big bag of WAN Chain, and I've had it for a long time. And I've added to the position over time, usually actually at these lows. And so it's getting to a really attractive price again. I love it at the $36 million market cap. Do notice most of their tokens are in circulation. So like 95% are in circulation. So there's not tokens to be dumped on your head. What WAN Chain does is cross-chain bridge technology so that you can bridge stuff from one chain to the other. So right now you can send Bitcoin from the Bitcoin network to WAN Chain and hold it on there. And then as you exchange it, you're not paying all these big fees. And they're continuing to cross-chain all these different major chains with really, really low transaction costs to send stuff across. Now, there's other competitors for this. What makes WAN Chain special is that they have a trustless bridging system. So the incentives that they set up are so that there's not incentives for people to cheat in the system. Those incentives are stripped away. And so, like the competitors, most of them use a trusted bridge system. And a trusted bridge system, it sounds like, oh, you can trust it. But a trusted bridge system actually means you have to trust that the actors in the bridge aren't going to cheat. And we have seen lots and lots of times over the past 3 years, these trusted bridge systems get hacked. And then the token gets dumped, or somebody within the trusted bridge system takes those private keys and they access a bunch of the tokens that are locked up, and then they dump them or they send them to a friend and pretend it was hacked. And it just often turns into a mess. You got to trust that nobody will do something like that in a trusted bridge system. That's why I like this idea of the trustless system, and WAN Chain has one of the best trustless systems out there. And that's why I've been so big and bullish on it. A lot of people just don't know about the trusted versus trustless yet, and they haven't thought about it until all of a sudden their funds get hacked in a trusted bridge. and then they start thinking about it. All right, let's jump on to the next, which would be...
Is it COPI?
COPI, yes.
Yeah.
Suggestion from, I believe, Abe requested this.
Yeah, just on your trusted comment, it is very interesting, isn't it, that the phrase trusted sounds, better. I think saying something like no trust is needed makes it more accurate to what's going on, because it sounds like it's a trustless network, and you think, well, okay, trustless doesn't sound great, but what it means is you don't have to trust people. It's not required. So I guess we need to invent a new word that describes it so people understand.
I know, it's like all the insider crypto people, like, we've grown up around that word, right? Because Bitcoin, the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is the trustlessness of it. But you're right, trustless makes it seem like, oh wait, there's some kind of problem with it, rather than no trust is needed network, right? If they said no trust is needed bridge, it better encapsulates it. Yes,
absolutely. So it was COPI, I believe, that you wanted to look at next. So I've got it on my on TradingView. I'll just double check that is that around. Yeah, that seems to be around the right price, I believe. And structurally, the market is still in an upward trend. We've drawn this trend in here before, and it's come off in a correction, which is fine because everything else has been correcting. On this particular coin, I think the data's come and gone on different exchanges or what have you. So we don't have a lot here. So that's why I was just quickly looking over at what we've got on CoinMarketCap to see whether I could get any more data. And if we look back, we can see that this has been pivoting around the current level, which is around nearly 3 cents for quite some time. So it's acted as resistance and then swung up over that level about as much as it swung down. So it's pivoting around this current level here, which means that it may be tempted to go a bit lower before it then swings back up again. But I'd hope that it moves with everything else. In other words, there is some real bullishness going on in the majors, and this is in an upward trend. So I expect this to bite too. I just can't say whether this is the exact point that's going to happen, but I could understand nibbling it here and maybe holding it over this trend line as a stop loss. It's testing the 200-day as we speak, so it's kind of bouncing on this particular chart, which is fine. In fact, given the way it's been broadly range bound, it's actually interesting that the 200-day moving average has been going up, as has the 60-day as well. So, for me, I think this is a buy, but I'm going to have to wait just a little bit longer to see if it responds, because I think it might come in the second wave, whereas there'll be other coins that go first, and then this follows just a little bit later. So as much as I like it, and I think there will be some upside opportunities, I think I'm going to wait just a bit longer to see if it gets a bit cheaper towards this trend line before I would say buy. But I would like to come back to it, and I know it's one that we've looked at a few times.
Yeah. I think it might get more attractive. My thoughts are the same as Paul's here. And for me, it's a wait as well, even though I love this project. Do note that, like, we had one of the first interviews with cornucopias back when they were launching. And if you remember that video and you were part of the Rainmaker family, Josh suggested that you join the Discord. And if you joined the Discord at that time, you got grandfathered into the OG chat on Discord, which gave you access to some special things. Like, they launched these cornucopias Bubble Jet Sprinter OGs customs, and they're selling, the lowest price is 2,000 ADA. Now, if you are part of that OG discussion, there are some things you need to sign up to test the game. They are going to be purging that. So if you're one of our Rainmaker family and got in on that, people who aren't active in that Discord channel will get purged from OG. And to be active, there's some daily things that you can do. Hit me up in Telegram or Discord if you're in that and want to know what you need to do to keep that, because they will be releasing another OG item. where probably because they're so limited, notice there's only 800 of these. And remember, they're going to be purging the OG things. So there will be less going forward, less members. So yeah, hit me up if you want to keep that. All right. So back to cornucopias. Let's see. Let's look at, I want to look at a few things. First of all, their market cap is at 23 million, which is high for where most blockchain games are right now. Cornucopias, though, was smart to launch within the Cardano ecosystem where they don't have a lot of competition within the Cardano network for AAA level games. And so that was great and smart of them to segment like that. Additionally, like the graphics and what they're releasing, that they're very active and show their community what they're doing. If it's successful, if the game's successful, this token is going to do really, really well. And I wonder sometimes if this isn't what the metaverse really looks like, rather than Sandbox and Decentraland, where they're metaverses, but with nothing really to do. Because I've been in Sandbox and Decentraland, and it's kind of boring in there. When you build a video game where people are in there for reasons, and then you create social aspects that they can interact. What if that ends up being the future of metaverses for at least the near future? And if so, cornucopias might be positioned well for that. Though I do think their price is probably going to correct down some more. I'm very bullish on this project. I have a metric ton of land in their stuff, and I bought a metric ton of land in Axie Infinity and did extremely well on that. And my hope is that cornucopias also does tremendous, not just in their token, but their land. So though I'm very bullish on it, I think it might get a little bit cheaper in the short term and correct off this run up it had, because that often happens in these bear markets, that things go crazy and then they correct back down. And that's when I like to pick them up. So great suggestion by Abe. That's my thoughts. Why don't we take a look at our next one, which is MATIC?
Yeah, MATIC's always been a favorite because of the way it managed to hold on during the big crypto winter and the correction. And it just maintained a more bullish stance. It didn't give up as much of its early gains as some of the other coins. So it's always been in the kind of top one, but it's also been going sideways. Actually took a bit of a hit most recently, more than others. So it's a bit swings and roundabouts. But I think generally speaking, I still like this, and I like the structure of this chart, because this still looks to me like this is part of a continuation of this overall trend, because it hasn't, even in the depths of all the bearishness that we saw last year and everything else that's happened, it still managed to make a higher low, and it still hasn't eaten into this trend too much. So when more bullish sentiment comes in, it needs to break out of this. So I'm quite happy with something that consolidates, as long as it doesn't start to turn bearish. So for me, this is a buy. I like the way when it sold off, that was like a spike low. So this is a good example of when the market panics, makes a low, rallies back up. Now it goes sideways, making a base. And yeah, it's tentative because it's very volatile. The market's been volatile. So I'm not saying you can shut your eyes and buy anything, because there's a lot of risk associated with especially some of these smaller coins. They're very volatile, and you just don't know. Sometimes you got to put in a stop loss, and that's your parachute level. But structurally, if we take a step back, it's done this here. If you see the way it went sideways for a long time and then broke out, I think it will do something similar. I think there'll be some form of repeat where it's going to go sideways. Definitely, it's been doing that for a long time, and then it'll break out. So when it starts to break out, I want to jump on board that. But usually a spike down is an indication that there's been a bit of panic, and that's cleared out anybody who wants to sell their position, and then the market settles down. It usually takes a few weeks, and then the bullish move can start to build from that point. So I'm not saying there won't be any volatility, but I think this could be a stake in the ground for where the low is. So I've drawn a trend line. Obviously, I'd have to revisit it if that breaks, but for the moment, I'm going to say it's a buy.
Very nice. I like MATIC at these prices. I'm not personally buying a lot of blue chips. In fact, the only blue chip that I hold is Cardano. But if there's people have different preferences on what they want, and it's a fantastic blue chip. In my feeling, is a fantastic price on this blue chip. I'm going to also rate it a buy. Next cycle, I don't have anything against blue chips other than like my risk profile for this cycle is just higher. And so next cycle, though, I will be holding a lot more blue chips. And Polygon has done tremendous things to fight its way to the top and earn its way to the top. And it's one of the, it's a blue chip for a reason. Very strong project with strong leadership. So I like it. Let me share with you guys. Bitcoin has broke 30,000 while we've been talking. And so thanks for the heads up on that. Web Zombies. Yeah, absolutely amazing. All right, jumping over to Polygon. Right now its market cap is at 6 billion. So when I say it's a blue chip, it's a blue chip. It was as high in the past as $2.73. It's all the way down below 70 cents now. And so it's a fantastic price. Now, a lot of people have different risk profiles than me, and that's great. And for those with a lower risk profile, like I suggest you do your research on Polygon and see if this doesn't fit it, because I like it at this price. And maybe you get lucky and it comes down cheaper, and then you can get some more. But I like these low prices, and Polygon, I think, has an extremely solid future for cryptos. I mean, crypto projects are higher risk than even stocks are, and that's why the volatility is so much higher. But within the crypto space, it's one of the lower risk projects. All right, let's jump over to animal concerts. Just a little bit of news while you're pulling up that chart. So I had some people in the community reach out to me and say, what is going on with animal concerts? The CEO, Colin Fitzpatrick, took CEO off of his Twitter profile. And I did reach out to him, and I don't have an answer to that question. He did respond and said everything's good. He's going in for major surgery in a couple weeks, and then he'll be back, and he'll probably join us on the channel. So I don't know why he took it off his Twitter profile. I do know he launched his own YouTube channel, and he had one of the members of Pink Floyd on to talk about NFTs and where that was going. And it was a fantastic video. It's not a lot of subscribers yet because his channel is pretty new, but he has access to high-level people, and so I hope his channel ends up being really good. I followed it, and I'm looking forward to it. He just released another video, so looking forward to his interviews. To me, interviews are some of the best videos out there because it gives you insight, especially as you interview project founders. And one of the reasons I created this YouTube channel is not enough people were doing interviews with the project founders. And I wanted that information. I wanted to read just see the body language of the person. And I wanted to see their thoughts about the project. And there weren't enough interviews going on. And so I knew as an investor, if I could add enough value to be able to get an audience, together we would have a large enough group that we could get interviews with the projects that we're interested in to bring them on and I guess get some information directly from the projects about the vision and kind of gauge the quality of team that they have by listening to the team members themselves. And it's been an epic success. We've had lots and lots of interviews, and those interviews have helped me, and I imagine all of you, make more informed decisions. All right, let's jump over.
So I think this is the last one on the list that we've got, which is animal concerts. So I was just trying to get an update on the CoinTrader Pro, and for some reason it runs out on the 13th of June. So I've just had to switch over to Coin Market Cap, which, as we know, has got the data, which is great, but we haven't got the technical charting ability, which is a compromise. But at least we've got the data, which I think is important. Now, I would say that as a concept, I really love the idea of the ability to attend concerts through the internet. And I think one of the major things that's happened recently that I haven't really heard much or people talking about, possibly because it hasn't been released for use yet, is Apple's Provision virtual reality. And I think that is going to be an absolute game changer. So what they've done there, once it's released, of course it's stupidly expensive, but it's going to come down, it's going to get better. And then if it's able to give you any sort of immersive experience in a concert, that could revolutionize the internet. Lo and behold, Meta has been going up a lot from its low. Wonder how that happened. You know, what were they looking at? That what were investors looking at that got them so bullish? I mean, if you'd known that Apple were in development of a project like that, that plays into what Meta was trying to do as well. So it's really interesting that those things turned around. Now, I know that's the fundamental stuff, and I leave that for you guys because you know more than I do. But what I'm seeing here in the technicals is clearly not great. I mean, the trend is down and it's come towards its prior low, which kicked off this move here before. So it has done that. It's got previous where it will go into this massive decline and then turn around. But given that, I would want to wait for some form of trend changing rally, or even a single bar to be the firing gun for a reversal of the trend, or put in a downward trend line and wait for it to break that, because this is very smooth. And usually in my experience, when the market comes into a low like this, it does try and break it. So I can't say just because I'm sitting here today and market's there that this is the right place for me to buy. I need the market to at least show some form of bullish price action to join, even if it's relatively small. So the smoothness of this downward trend is what concerns me, and the fact that it's been very, very consistent. So when something like that is happening, to my mind, I'm thinking, well, why would it stop just now? Why I could have had this view, say, 2 or 3 weeks ago, or I could have been looking at the chart 2 or 3 weeks ago and thought, well, okay, this is the point to buy, and it's still gone down further. So I imagine 2 or 3 weeks into the future, thinking, is this still going to go down? So as much as I like the idea of the project, and I've kind of laid out why I'm sympathetic towards the whole idea, the price action does have to respond for me to buy it, because I could be wrong. So at the very least, it needs to break this downward trend line, and ultimately, it being very close to this low, you know how I am about that. I'm always very, very cautious about trying to pick something up when it's on the absolute low of the chart. I think you've got to be very confident in your view of it, and have done your research, and or put in money that you can definitely afford to lose. So for me, it's going to be a wait, but I would like to see some evidence of this turning around. And with the majors, firing off so nicely, I can hope that the rotation will be quicker, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we can come back to it and see that the chart looks better.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. Personally, I'm a big fan of this idea as well, and I hope Animal Concerts nails it out of the park. It is a crypto winter, and a lot of these projects go into like hibernation, and sometimes it's hard to tell when something's in hibernation if it's even still alive. And that often happens. In fact, there were projects in the last crypto winter that I thought were on their way to dead. They were in hibernation, and I wondered if they would survive. And I was just stubborn enough. I held on to most of their tokens, ended up being really fortunate that I did, because some of them did incredible. In fact, one of the ones that did incredible that I didn't know would survive at 3 different points, I thought they were on their way to dying, and that was Axie Infinity. And I was following Axie Infinity before it became self-evident that this idea of play to earn would happen. And people look back and they see the charts and they say, oh, I wish I had bought way back then. And what they don't realize is way back then, when the price was so low, was nobody was thinking about it. Nobody was talking about it. It was just kind of a hope and this thought that made sense if you really looked and dug deep, but hadn't proven itself yet. And that's what you were buying on, an idea that hadn't proven itself yet, but seemed like it was exactly where things would be going. Isn't that what we're getting with animal concerts? It's an idea yet that has not been proven. I mean, a little bit has been proven. They did a metaverse concert in Minecraft, and they did one in, I think, Fortnite or something. And the artist made a ton of money, and they only had to do one concert. The artist absolutely loved it, because normally, in order for them to make a lot of money these days, they don't make it from the actual like sales of the music. They make their money from traveling and doing these concerts and tours. But that's extremely tiring, and they got to be on the road, and it's a lot of hard work. The artists love this idea of the metaverse concerts. There's two things that are still needing to happen for this to be able to become a reality. First is you need the ability to render such an environment, or everyone's going to be looking at pretty low quality on their screens unless they have a mega computer. Like, yeah, of course I have it, but a lot of people don't. And so there has to be the ability to render it. And also you need the metaverses to be able to hold large numbers of people in one instance. Because no fun if they put like 20 people per instance and you can look around and see 19 other people there. You want to be in a stadium of other people with thousands of other people there, so it feels somewhat like you're at a real concert. And so I did watch a video on a project that is coming out with an idea like that. I don't think this project has a token or anything, but they say they've got a solution for that to allow things like metaverse concerts to happen as far as the technology. And where Animal Concerts comes in with that is Animal Concerts is the one that kind of think of them like the agent for the artists and lining it up with the different metaverses. It's not going to run on Animal Concerts technology that implements it. They'll need another company to make this all happen. Just like in regular concerts, you actually have 5 or 6 businesses bringing that concert together. One is the person who books the stadium and organizes all the planning and events, and you have multiple businesses that come together to make that happen, and Animal Concerts would just be part of that. But right now, most people aren't even talking that much about metaverses other than the Apple goggles release. And Paul nailed it, that those will become cheaper. You'll have more competition come in, because for now it was just like Facebook's MetaQuest or whatever, and their goggles. Now Apple's in the mix. You'll probably have more competitors come in. I wouldn't be surprised if Samsung and some others move into it, and the price is going to come down while the technology gets better, and then they'll become affordable for the average person. In fact, maybe even you'll be able to take your phone and put it in a goggle thing, and your phone will end up being that, because they got high definition cameras on the other side of the phone. It's entirely possible. But that's going to unfold over the coming couple years, as well as the technology come into place to be able to host thousands of people in one instance. And so this is a thing of the future, but the problem with the future is it's in the future. And right now, a lot of people don't think about the future. They only think about what's happening now. And that's why there's so much money in investing. I call it golden vision, is being able to make some educated guesses of exactly how things are now and what things look like in the future and the past that will lead to. And you're not going to be 100% right, but on the ones that are right, if you're taking smart bets, your gains will vastly exceed your losses and make you a tremendous amount of money on your capital over time. That's what investing is all about. All right.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing with VR has been that they needed to solve the technology so that you didn't suddenly feel a bit queasy about using them, because if there's any lag, if you use it for too long, it can be a problem. And I think what we saw with Apple is that they developed their own chips. Apple Silicon is hugely fast, very efficient. Their new computers are just, their own silicon are just quite amazing for what they can do and their efficiency. So they brought that technology into the goggles. But not only have they done that, I think what's been really smart is they've made it more socially acceptable, because you can see the other person's eyes. And if you were just in the office with a VR headset, people could be just messing about, couldn't they? you couldn't see what they were doing, and it just be really odd. You feel like disconnected and you won't want to be there. But if you can actually see people and put the two things together, I think that's really smart. I think that's, and I haven't experienced it, but just looking at the people who have experienced it, talking about how it made them feel, the response, yeah, you could discount some as being, YouTubers just selling products and what have you. But reading between the lines, I think there's a bit more to that. So I'm really excited about it, and I'm looking forward to it. It's not going to be available in the UK for a while. It's going to be US only. So have to be somebody out there that can tell us on this channel what it's like. But yeah, I'm excited about it, and I think $3,500 is a lot, but it's also the quality of the product that you're buying and the ability to develop for it as well. I think all those things, if you're going to have an outstanding experience with it, then it might just be worth it. So, so we shall see.
Yeah, I feel like that whole experience is coming together more and more, and to make it interesting, right? And so when Decentraland, the idea launched, and all they had was their token. There was you couldn't go into it. I was like, man, metaverse are going to change the world. Because of this idea of ownership, you can own land in it, you can own items, and you own it. And I still think that concept will change the world. I don't know which project is going to be the massive first winner. And then probably behind it will be a massive company that then takes over. You might have the first company that really hits mass adoption, not even be the final company, kind of like, what was it before Facebook? You had some other.
Oh yeah, you had what was it? MySpace. Yeah, MySpace.
Yeah, and came in, and then Facebook did much better, right? So,
and there was Friends Reunited as well, which was created by an English couple.
Nice.
Which was massive at one stage, and it was kind of the precursor to Facebook. And then I don't know where it is now; it's gone. But that's the thing about technology.
So it's hard to see into the future, and you just have to make educated guesses where it's going to be. Well, we all look back and wish we could have bought Microsoft in the early days. That's because we saw exactly where it did go. But in order to really make money in investing, since we don't have time machines and we don't have magic crystal balls that can see the future, the way you make money through investing is researching and finding those ideas that have a strong chance of succeeding, and then trying to buy them when they're cheap and sell them when they're high. Paul, we appreciate you joining us. Everyone loves, the entire Rainmaker family loves the videos when you join us. Many of them,
thank you.
Favorite video of the week. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Just say very quickly online that I should really have asked you, but next week I'm going to be traveling on Wednesday. So just to say it so that people could hear, potentially if we could do Tuesday, but have a look at your diary, just so people know that maybe next week it might not be on the Wednesday, but I'll speak to you offline about that. But thanks guys, really appreciate it. Always enjoy your picks, and look forward to whenever we might be doing it next. So thank you.
Yeah, Tuesday works for me. I already checked. Brilliant.
Look forward to it then. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I just want to say a few things before we wrap up for the day. I have been super excited with these events unfolding, because sometimes as an investor, you get a glimpse of where things are at the bottom. And I think the bottom is in. There was a lower bottom that was hit earlier, and then often there's a secondary bottom. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that. Things go a little bit cheaper, but a lot of the major players in the space, their actions have become clear. So there's an old saying that says, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And we have absolutely seen the fight part from the US regulators and a little bit the European regulators. And the European stuff, a lot of that has gotten at least an initial, it's hammered out. We have seen the UK elect some very pro-crypto politicians. And I think we're going to have more of that down the road. And so I think we're at the worst part of, in fact, I think we just passed the worst part of, then they fight you. And we're on to the, then you win. Now, if you expect that it's going to run up to like amazing heights in the next 2 weeks or 2 months, I think you'll be disappointed. But I think these prices that we're at are amazing prices that you will look back in the future from now. You will look back and you say, oh my gosh, I wish we had those prices again. And that is really exciting to me. I do want to thank all of you who have joined the Rainmaker family. And the reason is because I had this idea, having been through 2017's bull run and then 2018, 19, and 20's bear market. And what I saw is most people, even really good people, wash out. And the reason is because within the communities that you live in, it's first of all very hard to find anybody pro crypto. Second of all, if you find some people that are pro crypto, they probably don't even know what they're doing. They don't understand market cycles. They don't understand the reality. And so a lot of times good people get washed out because they don't have a support network that gets market cycles. So I thought, as I was deciding to create the channel and then into it, what if we created different ways to have a community? So we created a Telegram group, and then we created the private Discord. And my hope was with those that people could have informed discussions, not just like anybody coming in that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. They're 19 years old, haven't studied business cycles, investment cycles at all, come in and be like, oh my gosh, this project is going to zero. Because you would be shocked at the number of people that I saw wash out the last crypto winter because of idiot comments by people who don't know what they're talking about like that. And so there were many people selling Cardano at 5 cents and 4 cents and 3 cents and 2 cents and 1.7 cents. And then from that bottom of 1.7 cents, it went 200x. And yet at 1.7 cents, there were people talking like they were absolutely sure Cardano would go down to 0.1 cent. And other people who just didn't know thought that those people knew what they were talking about. And they absolutely did not. So my hope was to create a community where we could have educated discussions. We could analyze the real pros and cons at a deeper level because sometimes projects do fail. Though last crypto winter, as I was researching Cardano, there was no reason it was going to fail. All the stuff that people were talking about was just fear, uncertainty, and doubt by people who didn't know what the hell they were talking about. And so I feel like we've created that, and many of you are already part of it. And I wanted to thank you for joining us on this journey, because I do think this is going to be an essential part of people making it through tough times, is having a community of people where they can bounce ideas off of. Now, you can join the Telegram group for free. It's completely ungated, but because it's ungated, sometimes you get idiots that join. A lot of bots. I had to kick 3 bots off the last 2 days, and the admins often kick them off too. And so there might have been other ones I didn't catch. We do have a gated one too, and it's gated through the Patreon. And so far, we've not had one bot or crazy weird person with crazy weird ideas join that. And the community is completely solid there. And you'll get some really good insights. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This wrap, well, you know what this wrap is all about. We created this wrap is just a fun way to be able to listen to, so it helps you make smarter investment decisions over time, because these principles hold true. Thanks so much.
To the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit, right before you could, was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss, cause I always made the time in mind. I stick the one out, cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Why when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift, and if feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, studying to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this road, cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, say the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Made the time fly by, years going so fast. This game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.